G'day, Bomber fans. I think we probably have to have a look at the VFL. Obviously there was a big loss to the Essendon Bombers in the AFL, and with some changes probably about to be made, it is the VFL that we look to see who could potentially come in. Vigo Vicentini is making his debut this week. He was rested in the VFL side, but if you're not following the Rezzies this year, you wouldn't really know too much about Vigo, but we cover every AFL listed player every week in these videos to see how they're all tracking. We're on debut watch again this week. We're on NGA watch. We had a young draft prospect play with us. There's also an injury. There's plenty to talk about in this video. In the end, it was a pretty fun game of footy. Casey got a hold of us late in the game. It was goal for goal before that. They won, by 29 points in the end, but it was a pretty awesome game of footy to watch. The highlight was probably not even an AFL player, but a VFL listed debutant, Lockie Monteith, who went on one of the biggest tears you will see on debut. 1 goal, 29 touches, 19 hit-outs. It was great to watch, good fun. I just thought I'd mention him, even though he's not with our AFL team. But let's get through some of the VFL players. Obviously, a Fremantle preview video tomorrow, then it's the actual game, so I won't be able to get through the player ratings for the Geelong game. Unfortunately, I was just crook and didn't really have the energy to do that, but I'm feeling better now, which is good. Starting with Elijah Tsatas. By the way, guys, I should say that you might notice a less concise recap with these players this week. I had the game on, I was watching it, but it was fresh off the AFL loss. I was really crook that day. I was pretty exhausted. Had the cricket on at the same time, so the game was on, but I don't know how much information actually stuck in my brain, in the old noggin. Elijah Tsatas, he's in a funny spot, He's just not really getting a run at it, not really doing enough to demand a spot in the AFL engine room. I know people would say he's better off in guts over Parrish or someone, but I don't think that's the case personally. I think if we were to make any, changes to the midfield, it would be Shiel coming in. I know Tsatas is a high draft pick and all, everyone says we've got to pick 5, we have to play him, but once you come to the club, your draft pick is pretty irrelevant. That's you don't just give games to players because they were taken on draft night higher than others. That doesn't really make any sense at all. I think, if Tsatas isn't really doing enough to be demanding a spot in the team, then that's just that, It's not because Scott has a vendetta against him. It's because there are better options in that midfield right now. And Tsatas, he's not really proving that he can run out games against good engine rooms. He's not someone that you can sit in a back pocket or something and fill in while they develop. He doesn't really have that versatility to his game. He's great at VFL level. He has high disposal games. He's an accumulator. He gets his hands on the pill. And in this match, I think he was probably better with the footy than he has been in quite some time. There was a bit more penetration in some of his kicks, which was good to see. And he would have been thankful that he had Shiel and Hobbs alongside him in the guts this week, because our midfield was pretty strong. Everyone there performed, actually, and Tsatas was very good. Probably amongst our best, I'd say. But I don't think he plays against the Dockers, if I'm being honest. His stats were good. 30 touches, 8 clearances, went at 76%, which kind of backs up what I was saying about his ball use looking better. I thought he was good. That's his best game in quite some time, I'd say, but I don't think he comes in against the Dockers. Ben Hobbs back in the Rezzies, straight in the midfield, didn't look out of place. And you'd probably be worried if he did look out of place. But no, I thought his contest work was good. He laid some pretty good tackles at important times, 6 for the game. Doesn't rack up the pill like Tsatas, and I don't think that's an issue. People will see that he didn't get the magic 20 or more disposals. He had just the 19, but when it doesn't feel like there's much of a gap, if any, between the two, between Hobbs and Tsatas. I thought both were good in different ways, and there were different cogs in the engine room. I think Hobbs probably should spend a little bit more time in the Rezzies. It's certainly not a pick-me game, but it was good to see him in the midfield. It's been a while since we've actually seen him play extended minutes there. He can probably do more in open play, I think. I don't know if he was really running with anyone. I doubt it, but I don't think he was much of a factor on the outside, and that's kind of the main knock on his game in general. So, yeah, it'd be good to see him a bit more in the VFL. He gives it a crack, Hobbs. I've always liked him. He just isn't really doing enough in transition both ways, so he probably should be working on that in the next few weeks. Dylan Shiel, I thought he was great, and I thought he probably could have come in and played against the Cats to replace Durham. And maybe his performance here was him telling Scott and co that, maybe they made a mistake not playing him. I think he was probably our best player. 27 touches, 7 clearances, 2 goals, another assist or 2 as well. He was really involved in a lot of our scoring. And by the way, that just brings me to, this is me being sidetracked, but VFL stats are just incorrect. They just are. So it actually says that Shiel has 2 score involvements, which would be his 2 goals, obviously. But he 100% assisted, who was it? He assisted someone, who was it? Was it McMahon? I don't think it was. He assisted someone running into an open goal. It might have been Unwin. I don't know. And he gave off a hand pass that that he could have finished himself. Point being, he's getting involved up forward, which has to be in the coaching group's heads now. Because it's all well and good for a veteran to dominate aspects of the game, the contest at this level, kind of like what we see with Tsatas. That's what you'd expect from them. But to see layers in this game from Shiel, I think that was important. And that's probably the best game Shiel has played at any level since he was rested right before that form slump. I wouldn't mind seeing him back in the AFL side to play the Dockers, to be honest. I know you guys want to play the kids. People will say Tsatas over Shiel, but I think some of these kids have probably had enough exposure at the level anyway, like Day Wicks, Loal, and others. They can probably have another crack at VFL level now, and I think Shiel could come in for them. Kayle Gerreyn, bit of an injury concern here. He went down in the third quarter, I think, and was getting some work done on the sidelines for a bit before he went down to the rooms. And when he did reappear, it was in the tracksuit with a sling on his arm, which is never good. There's a potential shoulder injury. I would guess it isn't a break just because the physios look to be testing mobility pretty strenuously. And I'm not an expert, so take this with a grain of salt. But I'm fairly sure you can tell a break pretty clearly with that area. Like you don't have to move his shoulder in every which direction. I could be extremely wrong there. I don't know. But he's obviously going to have scans to, get confirmation on what it is. Hopefully it's nothing bad because he was about to have a really good chance at ruck minutes, which would have been really good for his development because he's mostly been a key forward this year. He got a bit of ruck into him before he went down. He shared duties with young Monteith. So yeah, he might be sidelined for a bit, which is really annoying. It's not really affecting our AFL setup, but you got to remember that our VFL team is up against it too with all the AFL listed players missing. So wishing the best for Kayle. Jye Menzie, I thought he was really good. He had a poor week last week. But this game felt a lot like the one the week before that. He's kind of in a very fluctuating form line, Jye Menzie. He's either very good or very bad. But the good news is I think he's at least playing more good footy than bad footy. I'd say he was one of our better players on the night. He was going in really hard, same as last week. Like last week I thought he looked proper pissed off. There was real aggression. But this week, there was reward for it. 18 touches, kicked a goal, 4 tackles, had some really nice moments, set up a McMahon goal from a nice crumb on the boundary, had some really good efforts, pushed higher up the field as well. Yeah, I don't want to see him rushed back in the side so soon. I'd probably like a bit more consistency before he has another crack at AFL level. But I wouldn't really be surprised if he was to feature, given he's had a good game in areas that our AFL side didn't. I liked his work rate to get around that wing area, and that probably would have been pretty handy in the AFL. And also there are younger players that are just not really performing at AFL level who we've seen enough exposure from, as I said before. But yeah, I don't think he's really knocking down the door, but he's definitely in line to return to the AFL setup, you'd assume. I don't know if he does play this week, but I would probably rather he stays in the VFL and just, has a bit more consistency. I want to see him, we can't have this performance followed up by another stinker like we had last week. I want to see a few good games in a row from Menzie. Alwyn Davey Jnr, time is unfortunately just running out here. I don't know if he's going to get a crack at AFL level. I can't really see him making his way in the team unless there are millions of injuries. He's just not really doing enough right now. Every now and then you see glimpses and it's exciting. I really like watching him in full flight and I like the pressure he applies, but it is just not enough. It was another poor game. And unfortunately, that's all you guys really need to know right now. I could go into specifics, but I feel like I've done that in pretty much every video this year for Davey. He's had a few promising games, but it's just not really enough for someone out of contract. I think it's pretty clear to say that Davey is right in the firing line to, be delisted. He might not be with us in 2026, and that sucks because I really, I want father-sons on the list. I like Davey. but he's not quite getting there, I don't think. Rhys Unwin, pretty much the story of his year. I thought he had a crack. He got a little bit of the ball, kicked a goal. From memory, I think it was like a oh, maybe that was the Shiel goal. I think that was the one that Shiel assisted. He was running, I think it was Unwin, running into an open goal. It's coming back to me. Yeah, I mean, he's clearly someone who's not ready at all for AFL or league footy yet. And, you know, like, his size is clearly the thing holding him back, I think. And that's probably the best thing that can be holding you back at this age. Like, there are good signs. I like his lateral movement. I like his positioning, his smarts, but he's just not really big enough to properly contend with grown men for full games. We've seen plenty of glimpses. He had a really good game the other week, but I think he needs another preseason. And the good news is, you know, whereas guys like Davey and Menzie are under pressure, Unwin, you know, 11 touches, a goal. He can be doing that this year because he's got another year on his contract. So yeah, he just needs to be showing glimpses, keep doing what he's doing, and then really work on building his body up over the next preseason. Oskar Smartt, he had some nice moments. I actually thought he played pretty well. His stats don't really, you know, look that great, but you know, like 13 touches, I think 1 point. A few tackles, but I thought, you know, he had big moments, and usually I think, or maybe not usually, but the best ones probably came in that defensive half, and I think that's, you know, a bit like Menzie. I could see why he could be brought into the AFL side given the strengths he has bringing the ball forward with speed. And you know, I was really hopeful that he'd have like a massive game after last week where he was one of our best, because I think if he did, you know, a debut was probably, you know, bound to happen. But yeah, he was probably at the level of quality where, you know, it's not disappointing watching him play. I thought he was good, but it's not like he was great or one of our best or anything. Didn't get too many looks, I don't think, in the forward half. I don't really remember any. I could have been dozing off for a few of them. Probably needs another week in the Rezzies. Would have been a really good time to make a statement, but I mean, yeah, we've got some AFL players who've exited the team in his place if he did make a statement, but yeah, I don't think it's an issue that he's not. I think he'll be making his AFL debut at some stage this year. I think he's already showing that he's probably ahead of some other players on our list. Liam McMahon, I mean, yeah, after Vigo, this guy's probably the next debutant, I'd say. Like, he just looks the most ready of anyone in the VFL. I thought he actually, if I'm being honest, I thought he probably should have played instead of Archer May against Geelong. I think he's just pretty well ready-made and more suited to AFL footy, given the fact that he's played more footy in his life and kicked, you know, plenty of bags. And we saw another bag here. You know, last week it was 3, this week it's 4. He finds space so well inside 50, and he converts his chances. He only missed one, which was from a fairly difficult angle for a right footer. What impressed me most here was his tackling ability, though. He had 7 tackles for the game. And it's good because, you know, May was pretty much the same in the AFL, not with the amount, but his tackling pressure. So it's good that we've brought in 2 key forwards who aren't afraid to, you know, do some dirty work as well. Yeah, I thought McMahon was really impressive. I think he has to play soon. I don't know if it's against Fremantle. I don't, you know, are we really going to drop May and bring in McMahon? I doubt we do that. But I think he'll play pretty soon. And finally, not currently on Essendon's list, but probably will be next year, NGA prospect Adam Sweid. He made his VFL debut, and it was a big challenge for him. Like, he's clearly a kid out there playing against men. You know, I thought he had some moments, though. He's 17, so, you know, you don't just discount him because he had a quiet game, but there was some moments where you saw his lateral movement and agility, some cool hand passes. There was one where he was falling to the ground and kind of let it out over his head to a teammate, kicked a goal, you know, and it was from the goal square, but it still required Smarts to, you know, prop his feet and evade to snap over his head pretty much. Yeah, it's a good experience from the young man. He was clearly off the pace, but that is expected for a 17-year-old, you know. He is so young and so lean and small. I'm just happy to see him out there. I'm sure that we'll be talking about them both, Sweid and Hussein, again in these videos later in the year. Maybe even, or probably not this weekend. I think the Cannons do have a game, so they might play there instead. But definitely later in the year, I think we'll see them line up again with the Bombers. It's good. It's good to give them early exposure. Sweid had 10 touches, kicked a goal, did some nice things in a pretty quiet game. But that is that. Plenty to like, plenty to dislike. We're on debut watch, we're on NGA watch, injury watch, every watch you can think of, we were on it. Lots going on. No Vigo was weird, you know, watching him in the VFL. He'll be lining up against the Dockers, maybe alongside some others here. But that is that. Video done. Cheers for watching, Bomber fans. Make sure you like, subscribe, and go Bombers.